They say revenge is a dish best served cold. In my case, it came with a mop, bucket, and a hefty dose of humility for the woman who once made my life miserable. This is how I turned the tables on my disrespectful daughter-in-law. I spent 40 years as an elementary school teacher in a small town outside of Portland. My husband Robert and I raised our only son Michael in a modest 3-bedroom house that we purchased when we first got married. We were never wealthy, but we were comfortable and content with our simple lifestyle. Our weekends were filled with gardening, community potlucks, and the occasional fishing trip to the nearby lake. Robert and I had planned to grow old together, in that house, surrounded by photographs and memories we had collected over the decades. When Robert passed away from heart failure 5 years ago, something inside me changed. The house that once felt cozy now felt empty and silent. I would wake up reaching for him, only to find cold sheets beside me. Michael visited often with home-cooked meals and helped with household repairs, but he had his own life in Seattle, a 4-hour drive away. He worked as a software engineer for a large tech company and had recently started dating a woman named Vanessa, who worked in marketing at the same company. The first time I met Vanessa was during Thanksgiving 3 years ago. Michael brought her to dinner, and I could immediately see why he was attracted to her. She had perfect blonde hair, designer clothes, and the kind of confidence that commanded attention when she entered a room. She complimented my turkey and asked thoughtful questions about my teaching career. I was thrilled that Michael had found someone who seemed to make him happy. Their relationship progressed quickly. Within 6 months, Michael called to tell me they were engaged. I was surprised but supportive. He was 35 years old and had always been cautious about commitment. If he felt ready to marry Vanessa after such a short time, I trusted his judgment. The wedding was planned for the following spring, an elaborate affair at an upscale vineyard that cost more than Robert and I had spent on our entire mortgage down payment. During the wedding preparations, I noticed some concerning behaviors from Vanessa. She dismissed my offers to help with the planning and made comments about my clothing being outdated. When I suggested incorporating a family tradition where the bride carries a handkerchief that had belonged to the groom's grandmother, she told me it was old-fashioned and tacky. I kept these observations to myself, not wanting to create tension before the wedding. Michael seemed so happy, and that was what mattered most to me. After the wedding, Michael and Vanessa bought a large modern house in an expensive Seattle neighborhood. The first time I visited, Vanessa gave me a tour of their 5-bedroom home with floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture that looked uncomfortable but expensive. She pointed out the guest room where I would stay, a small room in the basement next to the laundry room. There was no mistaking the message. I was not meant to visit often or stay long. Still, I made an effort to build a relationship with my new daughter-in-law. I sent thoughtful cards for her birthday and their anniversary. I asked about her work and family during our infrequent phone calls. I never criticized her when Michael complained about their arguments. I believed that with time and patience, we could develop a warm relationship, like the one I had enjoyed with Robert's mother before she passed. Everything changed when Michael was offered a 6-month assignment in Tokyo. He would be gone from January through June, setting up a new office for his company. The project came with a substantial bonus that would help them pay off their mortgage early. Vanessa could not join him because of her own work commitments. The day before he left, Michael called and asked if I would consider staying with Vanessa for a few weeks. He was worried about her being alone in the large house, especially since there had been several break-ins reported in their neighborhood. I agreed without hesitation. I was retired with no pressing obligations, and I saw this as an opportunity to finally bond with Vanessa. Perhaps without Michael as a buffer, we could develop our own relationship. I packed enough clothes for a month and drove to Seattle with optimism and a car full of home-baked cookies and casseroles that I could heat up for our dinners together. The moment I arrived at their house, I realized my mistake. Vanessa greeted me at the door with a list of chores she expected me to complete during my stay. She had scheduled a house cleaner to come twice a week, but there were many tasks she felt were not covered by the service. She expected me to do all the grocery shopping, cooking, laundry, and plant watering. She informed me that she worked late most evenings and would need dinner prepared and waiting when she got home, usually around 8:30. I was stunned but did not object. I told myself that she was under stress with Michael being away and her demanding job. Perhaps this was her way of keeping busy and distracted. I agreed to help with the household tasks, thinking it would be temporary. I did not realize I had just accepted the position of unpaid housekeeper, with no days off and no end date in sight. The first week of my stay established a pattern that would continue for months. I woke early each morning and prepared breakfast for Vanessa, who barely acknowledged me as she checked emails on her phone. She left a list of tasks on the kitchen counter each day, often with specific instructions about how she wanted things done. The laundry needed to be folded in a particular way, the groceries needed to be from specific stores, the dinner needed to be ready at a specific time with the table set with specific plates. When I suggested we might eat dinner together and chat, Vanessa told me she preferred to eat in her home office while catching up on work. She added that she found my constant talking distracting when she was trying to decompress from her stressful day. I retreated to my basement room most evenings, eating my dinner alone while watching television on my iPad, with headphones so as not to disturb her. After 2 weeks, I gently asked when she thought I might return home. I missed my garden and community activities. Vanessa looked surprised and reminded me that Michael had asked me to stay until he returned. She added that she had already dismissed her house cleaner since I was there to handle everything. The implication was clear. I was expected to remain as her housekeeper for the entire 6 months of Michael's absence. I called Michael that night after Vanessa went to bed. I tried to explain the situation without complaining directly about his wife. I told him I was happy to help, but had not anticipated staying for the full 6 months. Michael sounded distracted and tired. He told me that Vanessa was under tremendous pressure at work and was being considered for a significant promotion. He asked me to please stay and help her through this difficult time. He reminded me that I had no pressing reasons to return home and that Vanessa needed the support. I reluctantly agreed. As the weeks passed, Vanessa became increasingly demanding. She criticized how I folded her expensive blouses, claiming I was stretching the fabric. She complained that the organic vegetables I purchased were not fresh enough. She pointed out dust I had missed on the bookshelves or water spots on the shower door. Each criticism was delivered with a smile and a condescending tone. She would tell me she knew I was doing my best, but maybe people of my generation just had different standards of cleanliness. The situation worsened when Vanessa began hosting dinner parties for her colleagues and friends. These events were always scheduled with minimal notice, leaving me scrambling to prepare elaborate meals for 8 to 12 people. Vanessa would give me a menu of complicated dishes that required ingredients I had to drive across town to specialty stores to find. During these dinners, I was expected to serve the food, clear the plates and keep wine glasses filled while remaining as invisible as possible. At one particularly large dinner party, I overheard Vanessa in the kitchen speaking to a friend. The friend asked if I was a professional cook or housekeeper that they had hired. Vanessa laughed and said I was just her mother-in-law who had nothing better to do with her time. She added that older people needed to feel useful, and she was, doing me a favor by giving me tasks to keep my mind sharp. Her friend laughed and commented on how lucky Vanessa was to have free help. Neither of them realized I was just around the corner, preparing dessert plates and hearing every word. That night, I sat in my basement room and cried for the first time since arriving at their house. I felt humiliated and used. I considered packing my things and driving home in the middle of the night, but I worried about disappointing Michael. He had always been a devoted son, and I did not want to create problems in his marriage. I decided to endure the situation until his return, then establish clear boundaries for the future. 3 months into my stay, I received news that changed everything. My older sister called to tell me that our Aunt Mildred had passed away at the age of 92. This was sad but not unexpected, given her advanced age and declining health over the past year. What was unexpected was that Aunt Mildred, who had never married or had children, had left her entire estate to me. This included a substantial investment, portfolio, a vacation property in Florida, and her primary residence, a historic mansion in the wealthiest neighborhood of Portland. I had always known that Aunt Mildred was comfortable financially. She had worked as an executive at a pharmaceutical company during a time when few women held such positions. What I had not realized was just how successful her investments had been over the decades. According to the attorney handling her estate, I was now worth over $15 million. I kept this information to myself initially. I needed time to process the dramatic change in my circumstances and consult with financial advisors about how to manage such wealth. I continued performing my duties in Vanessa's house, cooking and cleaning, while she treated me with the same condescension as before. But something had shifted inside me. I was no longer financially dependent on my teacher's pension. I had options and resources I had never imagined possible. The breaking point came when Vanessa informed me she had volunteered me to clean her friend's vacation home before a family gathering. She explained that her friend's regular cleaner had cancelled last minute, and she had assured her friend that I would be happy to help. She added that it would only take me a day or two, and that she had already agreed I would start the following morning. There was no question about whether I was willing or able to do this. It was presented as a fact. I stood in her immaculate kitchen, hands gripping the counter to steady myself. I asked her if she intended to pay me for cleaning her friend's house. Vanessa looked genuinely confused. She told me that I should be grateful for the opportunity to get out of the house and meet new people. Besides, she added, it was not like I had anything else to do with my time. When I pointed out that I had planned to video call with my book club the next day, she dismissed this as something that could easily be rescheduled, unlike her friend's important family gathering. In that moment, I saw Vanessa clearly for who she was. She viewed me not as family, or even as a person deserving of basic respect, but as a convenience, a free service she could offer to friends to elevate her own social standing. I realized no amount of patience or understanding on my part would change how she saw me. The power dynamic was too entrenched. She was the successful young professional with the beautiful home and busy social calendar. I was the aging widow, with nowhere else to be and nothing better to do. That night I made a decision. I would not confront Vanessa directly or create a scene that might damage her relationship with Michael. But I would not continue to be treated this way. I would use my unexpected inheritance to reclaim my dignity and perhaps teach my daughter-in-law a valuable lesson about respect and karma in the process. The plan that formed in my mind that night made me smile for the first time in months. The next morning I called Vanessa's friend and politely explained that I would not be able to clean her vacation home, as I needed to return to Portland immediately for a family matter. I apologized for the inconvenience, but suggested she contact her professional cleaning service. The friend was surprised, saying Vanessa had described me as someone who enjoyed cleaning and was looking for more work. This confirmation of how Vanessa portrayed me to others strengthened my resolve. I packed my belongings while Vanessa was at work. I left a note explaining that an urgent situation required my presence in Portland and that I would call Michael to explain. I did not elaborate or apologize. I simply stated facts and left before she returned home. The relief I felt driving away from that house was immediate and physical, like setting down a heavy burden I had carried for too long. Back, in my own home, I allowed myself to fully experience the emotions I had suppressed during my time with Vanessa. The anger came first, powerful waves of it that left me pacing through rooms and having imaginary conversations where I said all the things I had swallowed over the past months. I was angry at Vanessa for her treatment of me, but also at myself for allowing it to continue. I was angry at Michael for not seeing or not wanting to see what was happening. The anger eventually gave way to sadness. I mourned the relationship I had hoped to have with my daughter-in-law. I grieved for the family dinners and shared holidays that now seemed unlikely. I worried about the position I had put Michael in, and how this situation might affect my relationship with him. These fears kept me awake at night, staring at the ceiling and wondering if I had made the right decision in leaving so abruptly. Depression followed. I spent days in my bathrobe, moving between the bed and sofa, with little purpose or energy. I ignored calls from friends and made minimal effort to address the paperwork related to my inheritance. The contrast between my sudden financial abundance and emotional poverty struck me as darkly ironic. What good was wealth if I had lost my only family in the process? Michael called 3 days after I left Seattle. Vanessa had apparently told him I had abandoned my commitment to help her and left without proper notice. She portrayed herself as the victim of my unreliability. Michael sounded disappointed in me. He asked why I could not have stayed the full 6 months as planned. He reminded me how stressful Vanessa's work was and how much she had been counting on my help. I listened without interrupting, a skill I had perfected during my months with Vanessa. When he finished, I simply asked him how often he had spoken with Vanessa about how she treated me during my stay. There was a telling silence on the other end of the line. I then asked if he knew that his wife had volunteered me to clean her friend's vacation home without consulting me first. Another silence. I did not mention my inheritance or elaborate on the daily indignities I had endured. I simply told him I loved him, but would not be returning to their home under the current circumstances. The conversation ended awkwardly, with Michael promising to call back after he had spoken with Vanessa. That call never came. Instead, I received a text message a week later saying he understood if I needed space and hoped we could all move forward as a family when he returned from Tokyo. There was no acknowledgement of my experience or apology for Vanessa's behavior. It was clear he had chosen the path of least resistance, accepting whatever version of events caused the least disruption to his marriage. This realization was the turning point in my emotional journey. The fog of sadness lifted, replaced by a clarity of purpose I had not felt since before Robert's death. I was done being the accommodating mother-in-law who accepted disrespect to keep the peace. I was done being invisible and taken for granted. With my new financial resources, I had the power to create consequences for Vanessa's behavior, consequences that might ultimately benefit everyone involved, including Michael. I spent the next month consulting with the attorneys, handling my aunt's estate and meeting with financial advisors. I decided to sell my modest home and move into Aunt Mildred's mansion, which sat on 3 acres of landscaped grounds in Portland's most prestigious neighborhood. The house needed updating, but its bones were solid with 6 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, a library, formal dining room and separate servants' quarters above the detached garage. I hired an interior designer and gave her a substantial budget to transform the dated spaces into something that reflected my personal taste while honoring the historic character of the property. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed making decisions about paint colors, furniture placement, and art selection. Each choice felt like an affirmation of my worth and a reclaiming of my voice after months of being silenced. As the renovation progressed, I began to formulate my plan for Vanessa. It would require patience and careful timing. I would need to wait until Michael returned from Tokyo and they had settled back into their routine. I would need to present my proposal in a way that seemed generous rather than manipulative. Most importantly, I would need to ensure that both Vanessa and Michael understood exactly what was happening without directly stating my true intentions. The day I moved into the fully renovated mansion, I stood in the grand entryway and felt a sense of power I had never experienced before. The marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers. Sunlight streamed through tall windows onto custom furnishings selected for both beauty and comfort. This was my home now, every magnificent square foot of it. And soon, if my plan worked, it would also be the site of a long overdue lesson in respect and consequences. I gave myself one final week to settle into the house and prepare mentally for what was to come. I practiced what I would say to Michael and Vanessa. I rehearsed my facial expressions and tone of voice. I would not show anger or resentment. I would be calm, gracious, and seemingly oblivious to the irony of my proposal. When everything was ready, I made the call that would set my plan in motion. I needed my plan to appear organic and coincidental rather than deliberate. This required creating the right conditions and timing my actions carefully. The first step was to inform Michael about my inheritance and new home in a way that seemed natural and not designed to provoke jealousy. I called him on a Sunday afternoon, knowing this was when he and Vanessa typically relaxed at home together. I kept the conversation casual at first, asking about his return from Tokyo and how they were adjusting to being together again. I then mentioned, as if it were an afterthought, that I had some surprising news to share. I told him about Aunt Mildred's passing and the unexpected inheritance. I downplayed the extent of my wealth, mentioning only that I had decided to move into her house, rather than sell it because it held sentimental value for me. Michael sounded genuinely happy for me. He asked questions about the house and my plans for it. I invited him and Vanessa to visit soon, suggesting they might enjoy a weekend away from Seattle. I made sure to mention that the house was quite large and required significant maintenance, but that the change of scenery was revitalizing for me after Robert's death. I ended the call by telling Michael I had enrolled in several classes and community activities, so my schedule was pleasantly full these days. The seeds were planted. Michael now knew about my changed circumstances, but not the full extent of my wealth. He would inevitably share this information with Vanessa, whose curiosity would be piqued. The mention of the large house requiring maintenance introduced the idea of household help without directly proposing anything. The reference to my busy schedule established that I was no longer the idle widow, with nothing better to do than serve as their unpaid housekeeper. 2 weeks later, Michael called to accept my invitation. He and Vanessa would drive down for the upcoming long weekend. I expressed delight and began preparing for their visit. I hired a professional cleaning service to ensure every surface in the mansion sparkled. I arranged for a local catering company to prepare and serve an elegant dinner. On their first evening, I filled guest rooms with fresh flowers and luxury toiletries. Every detail was designed to showcase my new lifestyle without appearing ostentatious or boastful. During this preparation phase, I also laid groundwork in the community. I joined the neighborhood association and attended their monthly meetings. I made donations to local charities and accepted invitations to fundraising events. I hired a gardening service owned by a well-connected local family. Through these activities, I established myself as a generous new resident with an interest in community involvement. I made sure to mention occasionally that I was looking to hire household staff, but had not found the right fit yet. I also needed to understand Vanessa's current situation to ensure my plan would work. Through casual conversations with Michael, I learned that she had not received the promotion she had been hoping for. Her company had brought in someone from outside with more experience, leaving Vanessa frustrated and questioning her future there. This information was valuable. Financial insecurity and wounded pride would make my eventual offer more tempting. The weekend of their visit arrived. I greeted them at the door of the mansion wearing a designer outfit I had purchased specifically for the occasion. The look on Vanessa's face when she stepped into the entryway was exactly what I had hoped for. Her eyes widened as she took in the soaring ceilings, marble floors, and custom furnishings. She moved through the house in a state of barely concealed shock, asking questions about the age of the property, the cost of renovations, and the value of various antiques I had inherited along with the house. During dinner, served by professional staff in the formal dining room, Vanessa's attitude toward me shifted noticeably. The condescension was replaced by a newfound interest in my opinions and experiences. She asked about my plans for the house and property. She complimented my taste in decor and clothing. She inquired about Aunt Mildred and how she had accumulated her wealth. Each question seemed designed to assess exactly how rich I had become and what that might mean for her. Michael appeared uncomfortable with Vanessa's obvious fascination with my inheritance. He tried several times to change the subject to family matters or memories of his childhood. Each time, Vanessa steered the conversation back to my new lifestyle. By the end of the evening, the dynamic between us had shifted dramatically. Vanessa now saw me as someone with status and resources, someone worth impressing rather than dismissing. The following day, I arranged for a local real estate agent friend to stop by unexpectedly while we were having lunch on the terrace. I introduced her to Michael and Vanessa, explaining that she had helped me with some paperwork related to the property. The agent, whom I had briefed beforehand, naturally mentioned the property values in the neighborhood and how fortunate I was to have acquired such a valuable estate. She casually mentioned that homes in this area typically sold for between $6 and $8 million, with properties as unique as mine potentially commanding even higher prices. I watched Vanessa absorb this information, her expression a mixture of surprise and calculation. The agent then mentioned that I had been asking her about household staffing recommendations, as the property was too much for one person to maintain. This led to a conversation about the cost of household employees in the area and the difficulty of finding reliable help. The agent mentioned that many wealthy homeowners in the neighborhood had full-time housekeepers who earned between $25 and $35 per hour, plus benefits. After the agent left, Vanessa became even more attentive and helpful. She offered to clear the lunch dishes and asked if there was anything she could do to help around the house during their stay. I declined graciously, reminding her that she was a guest and should relax and enjoy the weekend. This reversal of our previous dynamic was satisfying to observe, but merely the setup for what was to come. On their final evening over drinks in the library, I casually mentioned that I was considering hiring a part-time housekeeper to help maintain the property. I explained that at my age, managing such a large home was becoming challenging, especially with my increasingly busy social calendar and volunteer commitments. I asked if they knew anyone in Seattle who might be interested in a well-paying position with flexible hours. Michael suggested I use a professional staffing agency, but Vanessa surprised us both by expressing immediate interest in the position herself. She explained that she had been considering a career change since being passed over for promotion. She was tired of the corporate politics and long commute. A flexible, well-paying position would allow her to explore other interests while maintaining an income. She added that since she already knew my preferences and standards, she would be an ideal candidate for the role. I pretended to be surprised by her interest, pointing out that the position would be beneath someone with her education and corporate experience. This was the critical moment in my plan. By suggesting the work was beneath her, I simultaneously challenged her pride and highlighted the irony of her previous treatment of me. If cleaning and cooking for me had been suitable work for a retired teacher, why would it not be suitable for a marketing professional seeking a career change? Vanessa insisted she was serious about the opportunity. She outlined her organizational skills and attention to detail as qualifications for the position. She suggested she could commute from Seattle a few days each week and perhaps eventually relocate if the arrangement worked well for both of us. Michael looked uncomfortable throughout this conversation, but did not object to his wife's unexpected career pivot. I maintained a thoughtful expression and told Vanessa I would consider her proposal. I explained that I would need to think about the potential complications of employing a family member and whether it might affect our personal relationship. I promised to let her know my decision within the week. As they departed the next morning, Vanessa hugged me warmly and reminded me to consider her offer seriously. The woman who had once treated me as her servant was now eagerly applying to be mine. After they left, I finalized the details of my plan. I would offer Vanessa the position at an hourly rate significantly higher than market value, making it financially difficult for her to refuse. The job description would include all the tasks she had once delegated to me, plus additional responsibilities related to the larger property. I would be unfailingly polite and professional in our interactions, never giving her cause to complain about my treatment of her. The contrast between my behavior as an employer and hers would be a constant unspoken reminder of her past actions. 1 week later, I called Vanessa directly rather than going through Michael. I offered her the position at $40 per hour for 20 hours per week, with the potential to increase to full-time if the arrangement proved satisfactory. I outlined specific duties and expectations, including cleaning, laundry, meal preparation, grocery shopping, and assistance with entertaining guests. I explained that I would provide all necessary cleaning supplies and equipment, but that she would be responsible for her own transportation to and from Portland. Vanessa accepted immediately, sounding genuinely excited about the opportunity. We agreed she would start the following month, working Thursdays through Saturdays. This would give her time to transition from her corporate job and arrange her commute from Seattle. I emphasized that our working relationship would be formal and professional during her hours of employment. I would pay her as an independent contractor, allowing her to manage her own tax withholding and insurance. After ending the call, I sat in my library surrounded by evidence of my new wealth and status. The revenge I had planned was now in motion, but I felt no glee or malicious satisfaction. Instead, I experienced a calm certainty that justice was being served in a way that might ultimately benefit everyone involved. Vanessa would learn valuable lessons about respect and the dignity of all work. Michael would have an opportunity to see his wife's true character revealed through her actions rather than her words, and I would reclaim the power and respect that had been taken from me during those months in their home. The final phase of my plan involved preparing the house and myself for Vanessa's first day of work. I purchased a professional-grade vacuum cleaner, premium cleaning supplies, and an expensive laundry system. I arranged for a uniform company to deliver several sets of high-quality cleaning attire in Vanessa's size, complete with the mansion's address embroidered on the pocket. I prepared a detailed employee handbook outlining expectations, procedures, and standards for each task. Everything was designed to emphasize the reversed power dynamic without being overtly humiliating. As the start date approached, I felt a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. I wondered if Vanessa would back out at the last minute or if Michael would intervene to prevent the arrangement. I considered how I would react if the plan failed or backfired in some unexpected way, but mostly I looked forward to seeing the expression on Vanessa's face when she realized exactly what she had signed up for, and the gradual dawning of awareness as she experienced firsthand the treatment she had once considered appropriate. For me, the revenge Vanessa arrived promptly at 8 o'clock on her first Thursday as my employee. She wore expensive casual clothing and carried a small designer handbag. Her hair was perfectly styled, and her makeup was flawless. She looked ready for a casual business meeting rather than a day of housekeeping. This was the first indication that she had not fully grasped what the job entailed, despite our clear discussion of duties and expectations. I greeted her at the door with professional courtesy, neither warm nor cold. I invited her into the kitchen where I had prepared coffee and pastries. On the counter lay the employee handbook I had created, along with an employment contract detailing hours, compensation, and responsibilities. Next to these documents sat a neatly folded uniform, complete with an apron and comfortable work shoes, in her size. Vanessa seemed surprised by the formality of the arrangement. She glanced at the uniform with barely concealed distaste, but did not comment on it. I explained that I had a busy schedule that day, including a lunch meeting with my investment advisor and an afternoon gallery opening. I would be leaving the house at 10 and returning around 4. During my absence, I expected her to complete the tasks listed in the daily schedule I had prepared. I then showed her to the small changing room adjacent to the laundry area where she could store her personal belongings and change into her uniform. I informed her that this would be her private space during working hours and that she was welcome to take her breaks there. The room was clean and functional, but deliberately modest compared to the luxury of the rest of the house. It mirrored the basement guest room she had assigned to me in her home. When Vanessa emerged wearing the uniform, the reality of her new position seemed to hit her. Her confident posture had diminished slightly, and her expression revealed a mixture of embarrassment and determination. I pretended not to notice her discomfort as I led her through the mansion, pointing out specific cleaning requirements for each room and demonstrating the use of various equipment and products. The list of tasks I had prepared was extensive but not impossible to complete in an 8-hour shift. It included vacuuming and dusting the entire first floor, cleaning 3 bathrooms, doing 2 loads of laundry, ironing table linens for an upcoming dinner party, preparing a marinade for the chicken I would cook that evening, and organizing the pantry according to a new system I had devised. Each task had specific instructions and standards, just as Vanessa had once provided for me. Before leaving for my appointments, I reminded Vanessa that lunch was her responsibility, though she was welcome to eat anything she found in the refrigerator. I suggested she take a 30-minute break around noon. I informed her that I had installed security cameras throughout the common areas of the house for safety reasons, and that I could check on progress remotely if needed. This was not entirely true. While there were indeed security cameras, I had no intention of monitoring her work while away. The suggestion was designed solely to create the same feeling of constant evaluation she had once imposed on me. Throughout this orientation, I maintained a pleasant but detached demeanor. I addressed her as Vanessa rather than the more personal term daughter-in-law. I did not ask about Michael or their life in Seattle. I kept the conversation strictly professional, focused entirely on work expectations and performance standards. This boundary between our personal and professional relationships was an integral part of my plan. I wanted her to experience what it felt like to be seen only as a function rather than as a complete person. When I returned home that afternoon, I found the house in good order. Vanessa had completed most of the assigned tasks, though not all of them. The bathrooms were spotless, the vacuuming was done, and the laundry was washed and folded, though not yet ironed. The pantry remained untouched, and the chicken marinade had not been prepared. Vanessa herself looked tired, with strands of hair escaping her ponytail and a smudge of cleaning product on her uniform. I conducted a detailed inspection of her work, noting both accomplishments and oversights. I praised the thoroughness of the bathroom cleaning, but pointed out water spots she had missed on the shower doors. I commended the careful folding of the laundry, but expressed disappointment that the ironing remained undone. Throughout this evaluation, I used the same tone and phrasing she had once used with me, creating a mirror in which she might recognize her past behavior. Vanessa appeared exhausted but determined to prove herself capable. She apologized for not completing all assigned tasks and promised to work more efficiently on her next shift. She explained that some tasks had taken longer than anticipated because she was still learning the layout of the house and the location of supplies. I accepted her explanation with a nod, but reminded her that the job required attention to detail and time management skills. I suggested she might want to take notes or create a checklist to help her remember all required tasks in the future. Before she left for the day, I handed her an envelope containing her pay in cash. I had decided to pay her daily rather than weekly or monthly, another deliberate choice designed to emphasize the transactional nature of our relationship. I thanked her for her work and confirmed she would return the following day at the same time. As she changed out of her uniform and prepared to leave, I noticed her checking her phone, which showed several missed calls from Michael. She did not mention these calls to me, and I did not ask. The second day followed a similar pattern, but with new tasks added to the list. I asked Vanessa to clean the guest bedrooms on the second floor, organize my walk-in closet according to color and season, and prepare a shopping list for an upcoming dinner party I was hosting. I mentioned that several prominent community members would be attending, including the mayor and a state senator. I emphasized the importance of the house being immaculate for this event. Before leaving for my appointments that day, I casually mentioned that I had hired professional cleaners for the 3 months before she started working for me. I commented on how efficient they had been, completing in 4 hours what would take an average person a full day. This comment was deliberately designed to challenge Vanessa's pride and create pressure to perform at a professional level despite her lack of experience. It mirrored her frequent comparisons between my housekeeping skills and those of her former professional cleaner. When I returned home that afternoon, I found Vanessa in my closet, still organizing clothes with a focused intensity that suggested she was determined to prove herself. She had completed most of the assigned cleaning tasks, but had spent extra time on the closet organization, creating a system that was actually more efficient than what I had requested. This display of competence in an area related to her previous corporate skills was interesting to observe. Even in a position she considered beneath her, she could not help but apply her natural talents for organization and presentation. I acknowledged her good work on the closet, but expressed concern about the bathrooms, which showed signs of hasty cleaning. I pointed out toothpaste residue on a sink and streaks on a mirror. I reminded her that thoroughness was more important than speed, and that I expected consistent quality throughout the house, not just in areas that interested her personally. This criticism visibly deflated her. She apologized and immediately went to rectify the bathroom issues, working an additional 30 minutes beyond her scheduled hours to ensure everything met my standards. As she was leaving that evening, Vanessa mentioned that the commute from Seattle was more challenging than she had anticipated, especially with traffic. She asked if I would consider allowing her to stay overnight in one of the guest rooms when working consecutive days. This request presented an unexpected opportunity to further my plan. I agreed that she could use the smallest guest room on the third floor, the one furthest from the main living areas and nearest to the back staircase, historically used by household staff. I made it clear that this accommodation was a professional courtesy rather than a family arrangement. The third day began with Vanessa already in the house, having spent the night in the designated guest room. I noticed she had brought a small, overnight bag with personal items, suggesting she had planned this request in advance, rather than making a spontaneous decision based on commute difficulties. This indicated she was committed to maintaining the employment arrangement, despite the challenges and humbling nature of the work. The task list for the third day focused on food preparation and event support. I explained that I would be hosting a small luncheon for my investment club and needed assistance with food preparation, table setting, and service. I showed Vanessa the menu I had planned and the specific china, crystal, and silver I wanted used for the table. I demonstrated how each piece should be polished and arranged according to formal dining etiquette. This was perhaps the most direct, parallel to her dinner parties, where I had been expected to serve and remain invisible. I informed Vanessa that during the luncheon she should wear a black dress I had purchased for her rather than the regular uniform. She would be responsible for refilling water glasses, clearing plates between courses, and ensuring the guests had everything they needed. I instructed her to address the guests as sir or madam and to speak only when spoken to during service. The luncheon itself was a carefully orchestrated demonstration of our reversed roles. Vanessa served 8 wealthy women with the same forced smile and quiet efficiency I had once shown her friends. She stood against the wall when not actively serving, just as I had been expected to do. She maintained a professional demeanor throughout, though I noticed a tightness around her mouth and a stiffness in her movements that betrayed her inner feelings about the situation. One particularly telling moment occurred when one of my guests asked who the lovely young woman serving us was. Before I could respond, another guest commented that it was so difficult to find good household help these days, and how fortunate I was to have someone so efficient. I watched Vanessa's face as she absorbed being discussed as if she were not present, being reduced to her function rather than acknowledged as a person. The flash of recognition in her eyes told me she was beginning to understand what I had experienced in her home. After the guests departed, Vanessa was responsible for clearing the dining room, washing the delicate china and crystal by hand, and returning everything to its proper storage location. This process took several hours, during which I occasionally passed through the kitchen to check on her progress or make a minor adjustment to how something was being done. Each correction was delivered with the same patronizing tone she had once used with me, accompanied by assurances that I knew she was doing her best. By the end of her third day, physical and emotional exhaustion were evident in Vanessa's posture and expression. As she prepared to return to Seattle for her 4-day break, I conducted a final evaluation of her first week of employment. I noted areas where she had met expectations and those requiring improvement. I provided a detailed list of tasks for her to focus on during her next work period. I reminded her that the position could become full-time if her performance warranted it, with a corresponding increase in compensation. This pattern continued for 6 weeks. Each Thursday through Saturday, Vanessa worked as my housekeeper, performing tasks nearly identical to those she had once assigned to me. The physical demands of the work took a visible toll. Her manicured nails became shorter and less perfect. Her once immaculate hair was often pulled back in a simple ponytail. The designer clothing she wore to and from work was gradually replaced by more practical, comfortable options. More significant were the changes in her demeanor and attitude. The condescension and entitlement that had characterized her behavior during my stay in her home gradually diminished. She became more efficient at household tasks and developed a genuine understanding of the effort required to maintain a large home to high standards. She stopped making excuses for incomplete tasks and instead found ways to manage her time more effectively. She began to take pride in her work, particularly in areas where she excelled, such as organization and event preparation. Our professional relationship evolved in subtle ways as well. The initial tension eased as we established a routine and clear expectations. Vanessa occasionally asked questions about my life or shared small details about hers during brief breaks. I maintained professional boundaries, but responded with basic courtesy to these attempts at more personal connection. I never mentioned Michael or asked about their marriage, though I noticed she spent increasingly long periods on phone calls during her breaks, often returning with reddened eyes, suggesting difficult conversations. The turning point came during the 8th week of Vanessa's employment. I was hosting a significant charity fundraiser at the mansion, an event attended by many of Portland's wealthiest and most influential residents. Vanessa was responsible for helping with preparations and providing service during the event, along with additional staff I had hired for the occasion. She performed her duties flawlessly, demonstrating a level of competence and grace under pressure that impressed even the professional event coordinator. After the guests departed and the other staff had been dismissed, Vanessa and I were alone in the kitchen, completing final cleanup tasks. She turned to me suddenly and asked why I had really hired her. The directness of the question surprised me. I considered deflecting, but decided the time had come for honesty. I asked her if she remembered how she had treated me during my stay in her home, if she recalled volunteering me to clean her friend's vacation house without asking me first, if she remembered telling her friends I was just a bored old woman with nothing better to do. Vanessa's face flushed with shame and recognition. She admitted she remembered and acknowledged that her behavior had been disrespectful and unkind. She explained that at the time, she had been consumed by career ambition and insecurity about her place in Michael's life. She had viewed me as competition for his attention rather than as family. She had used her authority in her own home to make herself feel more powerful during a time when she felt powerless in her professional life. This moment of raw honesty created an opening for genuine communication. We sat at the kitchen table, still in our formal attire from the fundraiser, and talked openly for the first time. Vanessa revealed that the experience of working for me had fundamentally changed her perspective on household labor and the people who perform it. She had never truly appreciated the physical demands, attention to detail, and emotional labor involved in maintaining a home and caring for the people who lived there. She also shared that her marriage to Michael had been strained by her decision to take this job. He did not understand why she had abandoned her corporate career to become a housekeeper, even for such generous compensation. He was embarrassed to tell friends and colleagues about her new role and worried about what this arrangement said about their family dynamics. They had been arguing frequently, with Michael pressuring her to quit and Vanessa insisting on fulfilling her commitment to me. I listened without interrupting, allowing Vanessa to express herself fully. When she finished, I explained my perspective. I described how it had felt to be treated as a convenience rather than a person deserving of respect. I shared how her actions had affected my relationship with Michael and my sense of place within the family we supposedly shared. I acknowledged that my decision to hire her had been motivated partly by a desire for her to experience what she had put me through. This conversation marked a shift in our relationship. The performance aspect of our arrangement gave way to something more authentic. Vanessa continued working for me, but the dynamic changed. We began to collaborate on household tasks rather than maintaining the strict employer-employee separation. I shared knowledge about cooking and household management that I had developed over decades. She contributed organizational skills and fresh perspectives on running such a large property. We began to find a balance that incorporated mutual respect and recognition of each other's strengths. Michael visited the mansion the following weekend, concerned about the prolonged arrangement and its effect on his marriage. He was surprised to find Vanessa and me working together in the garden, sharing stories and laughing. The antagonism he had feared was nowhere in evidence. Instead, he found two women who had developed an unexpected understanding through their shared experience. This transformation confused but relieved him. He joined us for dinner that evening, and for the first time the three of us interacted as a genuine family, rather than as people connected by obligation but separated by resentment. As the planned 3-month employment period neared its end, Vanessa and I discussed what would come next. She admitted she had no desire to return to her previous corporate career, but also recognized that continuing as my housekeeper was not a sustainable long-term solution for her marriage or her personal growth. I suggested an alternative arrangement. That would benefit all of us. I proposed that Vanessa and Michael consider relocating to Portland, where I would help them purchase a home in a neighborhood they could not otherwise afford. In exchange, Vanessa would assist me in managing my considerable estate and charitable foundation, a role that would utilize her professional skills while maintaining our new connection. The revenge I had planned had evolved into something I had not anticipated. Rather than simply teaching Vanessa a lesson about respect through humiliation and role reversal, I had created an opportunity for genuine transformation and reconciliation. The power dynamic that had once been so problematic between us had been balanced through shared experience and mutual understanding. We had moved beyond the roles of victim and oppressor, servant and master, to find common ground as women navigating complex family relationships and personal identities. 1 year has passed since Vanessa first arrived at my door in her designer clothes, unprepared for the reality of domestic labor. So much has changed in that relatively short time. Michael and Vanessa now live in a beautiful home just 10 minutes from my mansion. Michael works remotely for his Seattle company 3 days a week and commutes for the remaining 2. Vanessa has established herself as the executive director of my charitable foundation, a position that utilizes her marketing and organizational skills while providing purpose and community connection. Our family dynamics have transformed in ways I could not have imagined when I first conceived my plan for revenge. Sunday dinners at my home have become a weekly tradition, with cooking responsibilities shared among all 3 of us. Michael has rediscovered his relationship with me as his mother, no longer caught in the uncomfortable position of mediating between 2 women he cares about. Vanessa and I have developed a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared experiences. The foundation we run together focuses on supporting elderly individuals with limited resources, providing home care assistance and community connection. This focus emerged from our conversations about the vulnerability I had felt during my time in Vanessa's home and her new appreciation for the dignity of all forms of labor. We have established a training program for home care workers that emphasizes both practical skills and respectful communication with clients. The program has received recognition and funding from several national organizations. Vanessa has become a vocal advocate for recognizing and valuing domestic labor. She speaks openly about her own journey from entitlement to understanding. She uses her corporate background and connections to build partnerships with companies, willing to provide better benefits and working conditions for household employees. Her personal experience gives her perspective and credibility that other advocates often lack. I have found unexpected fulfillment in my role as mentor and philanthropist. The wealth I inherited from Aunt Mildred has allowed me to create meaningful change in my community, while also securing financial stability for future generations of my family. I have established a trust that will eventually benefit Michael and Vanessa's children, should they choose to have them, as well as supporting causes that were important to both Robert and Aunt Mildred. Last month, Vanessa organized a surprise birthday celebration for me at the mansion. As I looked around the room filled with friends, family, and community members whose lives had been touched by our foundation work, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this point. The revenge I had planned had been meant to teach Vanessa about respect through experiencing the same treatment she had once inflicted on me. What I had not anticipated was how the experience would transform both of us. The resentment and anger that had driven my initial plan have faded, replaced by genuine affection and appreciation for the woman my son married. Vanessa is no longer the entitled, dismissive person who once treated me like an unpaid servant. She has developed empathy, humility, and a genuine respect for people of all backgrounds and occupations. She has grown into someone I am proud to call family. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if Aunt Mildred had not left me her fortune. Would I have found another way to address the power imbalance in my relationship with Vanessa? Would I have simply withdrawn from their lives to protect myself from further mistreatment? Would Michael have eventually recognized the dynamics at play and intervened? These questions have no answers, but they remind me of the unpredictable nature of life and relationships. The mansion that was once the setting for my elaborate revenge has become a gathering place for family celebrations, foundation events, and community activities. The rooms that witnessed Vanessa's gradual transformation now hold new memories of cooperation, laughter, and genuine connection. The formal employer-employee relationship that began with tension and hidden agendas has evolved into a partnership based on complementary strengths and shared purpose. Sometimes, when Vanessa and I are working late on foundation business, we find ourselves in the kitchen making tea and reflecting on our unusual journey. We can laugh now about those early days of her employment, finding humor in situations that once held only resentment and discomfort. This ability to acknowledge our past without being defined by it is perhaps the most significant measure of how far we have come. The revenge I planned turned out to be something far more valuable than the momentary satisfaction of seeing Vanessa humbled. It became an opportunity for both of us to grow beyond our limited perspectives and find common ground as women, as family members, and as human beings deserving of dignity and respect. In seeking to teach Vanessa a lesson about the consequences of her actions, I learned important lessons about forgiveness, transformation, and the power of shared experience to heal even the deepest wounds. My daughter-in-law once treated me like a maid, so I hired her to clean my new mansion. But what began as revenge evolved into reconciliation, and in the end we both found something far more valuable than pride or power. We found understanding, respect, and the true meaning of family. Sometimes the best revenge is not making someone suffer as you did, but creating the conditions for genuine change and growth. In this case, what looked like punishment became the foundation for healing, and what began as a power struggle transformed into a partnership that has enriched both our lives in ways neither of us could have imagined.